So recently I've been playing a little game you may have heard of if you're on the deepest parts of the internet, Red Dead Redemption 2. Now obviously that's a lie. I know this is a instant classic for some of you. This has only come out in 2018, so it's really not that old, but it immediately became one of the best games that's ever been released. I've been having the most fun I've ever had on any game in my life right now, the last week I've had it, so obviously it's been an amazing experience. I want to start off by saying thanks to my friends too for suggesting that I play this game, and I feel like this is just unlimited amount of content because there is truly never a dull moment in this game, and I feel so overstimulated looking at this footage because it's only like a quarter of my playtime, and I have way too much footage to use. I was playing like 8 hours a day of this game. I want to start off with a story, and I kind of have to explain how this video is going to go. I'm going to be getting into the story and all that and be talking about some of my opinions on the things that happen in the game, so forgive me if this video is a little random. I know I've been saying that like every start of every video I've been making, but I just don't really know what to talk about. The next video I'm going to make is probably either going to be on Red Dead Redemption 1 or Bone Lab. Hopefully you guys can get a little more excited for a game that I'll have an easier time making a video about, but this is a massive game and there's a lot to talk about, and I don't really know where to land in particular. It's going to be a little bit all over the place, but I'm going to try my best to actually organize it and make it half decent. Now for context, I will say I did play this game back in 2018. I actually was playing on an original Xbox, and I loved the game back then, but I kind of was rushed through the game because it was on my sister's console, and I was having to play it on her account because I didn't own it, and yeah, there's a lot of other reasons why I rushed through the game. Immediately taken out of it as soon as I quit playing it because it was like, oh yeah, that was sad, but let's go back to playing Siege or whatever. I mean, it was 2018. I was like 2 years old. Revisiting this game as an adult was one of the best decisions I've ever made because now I'm a lot more emotionally mature. I can actually understand and handle what's going on in the game, the concepts, and not just be oblivious to, oh, I've never felt that. I've also pretty much forgot everything in the game except, spoiler alert, that Arthur dies. I knew that the game started off kind of slow, and it really does. The first 2 hours of this game is absolutely miserable. But beyond that, I just remembered it was a pretty good story, and I didn't remember a whole lot about the setup for that. Basically, you're stuck in the snow for the first 2 hours, and you really can't do anything except hope to get out as soon as possible. But you are introduced to one of everyone's favorite characters, but one of my least favorite characters, Sadie Adler. Now, I will say, take that with a grain of salt, I think her accent's what bothers me the most. As a Southerner, I can't stand how she says John, bro. That is not how Southerners say John. She goes, Jean. Not one person have I met in the South that says that shit like that. Don't even get that in my ear. Basically, the way you meet her is her ranch is overrun by O'Driscolls, and her husband gets killed. They take her as a hostage, and you kind of come in as her knight in shining armor. Except, you don't. Micah exists. He's one of the worst human beings in any universe ever, let alone in this game. And that's pretty quickly established. The first 30 minutes of the game is going to this little farm or whatever, and yeah, he pretty much flips a table and acts like he's gonna do something really bad to her that I can't use the word that I want to say, but he's a horrible person. Say what you want about Micah, but I do have to admit, I kind of love to hate him. He's an amazing character on paper, and props to the actor that portrays him because he does a wildly impressive job at being hateable. If I'm completely honest, out of all the people in the Vanderlyn gang, I feel like Micah would probably be the most talked about too in the real world. He's one of the better gunslingers of the entire gang. He's a real loudmouth, and he does as he pleases. He doesn't really ask to nobody. He doesn't like listen to Dutch when he tells him not to do something. He doesn't listen to Arthur. He'd have a pile of books written about him if he was a real person, honestly. And I can't say the same about most of the gang. Javier is really cool, and I love him. He's one of my favorite characters, but he doesn't do a whole lot. Same with Charles, one of the most iconic characters in the game, but he doesn't do a whole lot to be remembered. Now, in the real world situation where it was a Western and making movies and whatever else, if there was a movie made or a TV show made, like the damn Big Iron or something, or a song made, it would probably be about Micah or Arthur, because Arthur does a lot of crazy shit in this game, but I'll get into that later. Now, once you finally do make it out of the snow area, you go into one of my favorite areas to hang out in online, but one of my least favorite areas to hang out in the actual story mode. You move over to Valentine. Now, not a lot happens in Valentine. One of my favorite missions with Lenny does, where you go out drinking with him and you see a naked version of a female Lenny. I actually don't like that mission now that I'm thinking about it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. But not a lot happens in the story, but you do get a very good idea of how crazy this game is going to be. When you first walk out of Valentine, I always take a weird route with my horse, and I immediately found the first dead body that actually ends up leading you to a serial killer in the game. When I started realizing this, I realized how crazy this game was going to end up being. I can't believe this game is going to be this chaotic. I did not know what I was getting myself into. Now, one thing this game will commonly do is, by the time you get comfortable in the camp and you get established, you pretty much have to move right again, because obviously the Vanderlyn gang is on the run. They're running from the Pinkertons, the O'Driscolls, everything in between, dude. They're just trying to get away from Blackwater. So you're on a fishing trip with little Jack, because you got to teach him how to fish, because, you know, John's kind of like a deadbeat father at the start. You pretty much get run out of town immediately. Little cameo for you guys that have played the first game, Agent Milton and then Agent Ross come and see you, which they work for the whatever government government agency. And I don't know which one of these guys is from the first game. I haven't really seen them yet. I've been playing through the first game a little bit here and there, but I haven't really gotten too far. I'm just now getting into Mexico, so obviously it hasn't been that much happen. Now, why Arthur couldn't take that plea deal, I could not tell you, man. I don't know why Arthur wasn't being wise and was going to live his life out like Gunna, going to live his best life away from his friends that he snitched on. He chose the Y&W Melly route. He don't know where he is, and he buried him long ago. But now you've got to move camp. You go further down southeast into one of my favorite camps, if not my favorite camp in the entire game. It's right outside of Rhodes. This is the best camp to me because this is where the game starts turning into an absolute puddle of chaos. And a lot happens in this area that's super important to the story too. I feel like it's mostly Easter eggs that I fall in love with this area for, and I'll get in more into that later. One of the first things I remember doing from this area is you get Sean back, the Irish loudmouth that I fell in love with. He's one of the old members of the gang, and this is pretty much his debut. He's never referenced in the first game, and you don't really know nothing about him. You just kind of meet him in this game, but you fall in love with him immediately. And something all these Red Dead games do is you kind of fall in love with these characters, or again, hate these characters very fast. They don't have to do too much setup and like explain how you know him. You kind of just already know, oh, this guy's good, oh, this guy's bad. I fell in love with Sean immediately. Really cool guy, really funny, gave me a laugh, and maybe it's because I love Conor McGregor. I don't know. Now, in doing that, pretty much within this chapter, Sean gets absolutely executed. See this? No.
Now it don't feel right. I could have told you.
Gosh damn. I cannot believe that my damn TikToks got suspended as he got executed, but it's one of the saddest deaths in the game, and they don't even treat it like anything. It's literally 10-second scene that he gets for his death. Not even any more, not any less. It's like 10 seconds. He's walking, and a bullet just clotheslines him. I can't stand it. But in my mind, it kind of gave me this idea of like, wow, we are not invincible. We're all doomed if we don't change. That's what I kind of got from seeing Sean die, is because he was one of the more careful characters, and yeah, he would go rob stagecoaches and stuff, but he really didn't do a whole lot, and he wasn't really out there as much as someone like John or like Arthur that was constantly working up a little scheme or something to rob, or he really stayed out of trouble for a long time, and then he was the first one to get popped. I kind of just felt like, oh, we're all dead in the Vanderlyn gang, or we gotta leave. So this game kind of sets that up early, but you don't realize it until later. There's a lot of strangers missions in this area. For example, like the Klansmen that you run into that you can find out in the field. I went and absolutely destroyed them and their little gather. I was wearing all white when I ran into the other ones, so I kind of felt a little funny about that. One of the hardest times I've ever laughed at any game is literally captured on camera. When I walked up on those Klansmen putting up that cross and literally they dropped it on themselves, I don't think I've ever laughed that hard at something in a video game in my entire life. Damn, I'm wearing all white. This ain't a good thing.
What the hell are you fools wearing? Oh, Jesus.
These fucking idiots dropped it on themselves. It's one of the funniest interactions I've ever gotten. So I like to say in free roam games, there's a turning point where you really kind of understand like, oh, this is a free roam game and I can do whatever I want. And that's kind of where Rhodes was for me. That was like the turning point where I started realizing I can just run around, because Saint Denis was like right there. So I was like, well, that's not too far. I can just jog over there. And then I started running into the Strangers missions there. And then I started running off further north where I was going to like Annesburg and stuff like that. And this is where I kind of started to break away from the story. I ended up doing a 4-hour marathon of pretty much just doing Easter eggs. So I'm going to kind of get into those and talk about those for a minute, and then we'll continue more on the story. So I never knew this the entire time I played the game back in 2018, but there is a vampire in this game. In Saint Denis, if you go look at like 5 different locations where there's some rioting, he gives you a location that he's going to be, and you have to go there at night, and you run into him.
So, you found me.
Oh my god, it literally does kind of look like Nosferatu for real, like the old one though.
Hey, what are you doing?
Is he bulletproof? Is he about to find out what these bullets do?
What, you're a vampire? You're a goddamn idiot. I'll suck you dry.
Yeah, motherfucker. You can suck something of mine. Now, I think this is really cool because, again, if you guys know, Nosferatu is iconic, and they just made a new movie about him, so it was kind of hilarious to see him in a game. And I know that he's not named that, but I mean, obviously, look at his appearance. Second off, I found one of my other favorite areas for Easter eggs, which is Le Gras. If you guys don't know this, I am not very good at horror games. I don't do good in scary movies, nothing. I don't do that stuff. So when you go through Le Gras at night, it is terrifying in itself, and then you'll be riding around and start hearing somebody crying. That will scare the shit out of you if you don't know what's going on. And I had my Twitch chat explaining, oh, go over there, go over there. I went over there and got jumped by like 54 people, which the lore is they're called night folk. They don't talk, and they kind of just like maul people, rob them, kill them, whatever else. They jump me and stab me to death. So there's a lot of crazy Easter eggs like that in the game. Like the ghost that's out in Le Gras. I think that one's really cool, where it's just kind of something you observe more than you really interact with. I like more like that versus like, you know, getting beat to death. The whole bottom right area of the map, like Saint Denis, Rhodes, Le Gras, all that is kind of like the pinnacle for all the Easter eggs, even into the later chapters. For example, like the mad scientist and his little stupid RC boat. That was a whole story in itself. You run into him, you drive this little RC boat, which was one of my favorite actual missions, and this is actually later on in the chapter when you do move to Saint Denis to interact with it, but still, I mean, I might as well talk about it. You basically help him out with a little RC boat, and you have to drive it for him and demo it for him, and then he tells you, hey, come up to whatever, and you can see my actual laboratory where you'll see my real experiments. So if you ride up there, you'll actually see that he's built a robot, and you have to do this whole thing where you run out in a thunderstorm, and you have to place these little lightning rods down to build current, and then you have to go back and nearly get electrocuted in a damn Tesla coil tower, and then go in and you see him power a robot. Well, if you guys don't know the ending of this, I'm going to go ahead and explain it. If you come back, the scientist is dead. He's been like beaten to death by his little robot. And you can find the robot. I love that you can do like so much setup for this, because you find an electrical lantern, and then when you get close to him in the snow area, which it took me like 3 days to journey to, you see the robot, and he's sitting there like saying Papa, and like it's really sad. All the Stranger missions kind of have their own end to them. For example, like the Charlotte mission, she has an end to her story if you don't help her. All the Stranger missions kind of matter on how you do them because they continue on. And that's what makes this universe feel so, kind of so alive to me, is like, if you don't go help Charlotte up in the hills and show her how to hunt and all that, she'll die. For context, she's a widow and her husband dies and she doesn't know how to hunt. She lived a city life for like her entire life. So if you don't go help her, she's doomed. And what I kind of take from all this is the fact that like time still actually matters. Everything progresses as you progress. So like, let's say you do like 3 or 4 missions, and then you go over to Charlotte, help her with one mission, and then let's say you've got like 5 more, and you accidentally beat the game. Well, if you come back, she's going to be dead. For example, I did that exactly. I did one of her missions at very late game, and then I grinded out the rest of the game, beat it, and then I come back as John, and I was like, oh, wait, I thought I helped her. And I didn't realize there was 2 missions. So it's like the time is still revolving. Like you can't just go do everything at one time and get it done. Everything takes time to happen, and then you will have a short span of time to actually get these things done. And it makes it actually feel like real life. You're not in control of time. You got to kind of live life and pick what you spend your time with. Same thing with like the incest couple of like, if you just kill the woman, apparently the man will hunt you down the entire time. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't even let them talk to me that long. I immediately didn't think they were trustworthy, and I was luckily streaming the encounter, so when I ran up on them, everyone warned me before I went in that they're freaks. Don't go in.
No, you look perfect, princess.
Don't go in the house. Don't go in, they steal your money. What the fuck are y'all talking about?
Yeah, rest a while, and we got food on the stove and a bottle of the good stuff we've been saving.
Should I just execute him?
Then. I'm gonna go freshen up.
Oh, he's like throwing his wife around.
I best be on my way.
Oh, come on now. How you gonna turn down a hot meal and good company? I'll go open that bottle.
Don't come downstairs, bitch. Oh my god, she's psycho killer with a knife. Then I found the bones in the cupboard that was like, oh shit, they really like Jeffrey Dahmer people. Now, moving back on into the story, I want to say Rhodes is one of the coolest areas for the story too, is how they set up like beef between the Greys and the Braithwaites. I think it's really cool how they set this up, and Dutch kind of tries to use it as his advantage, is like, oh, we can rob both of them and they'll blame it on each other. And then really that kind of bites him in the ass later, because this is the big turning point for this whole chapter of you keep robbing them and your gang gets a little too greedy, and you keep on and keep on and keep on because you keep on making money. You try and resell them their own moonshine. You do a bunch of stupid stuff. And then finally, the Braithwaites realize what you're doing, and then the headmaster of the Braithwaites, Catherine Braithwaite, the grouch of it all, she's like, okay, let me capture little Jack and see how you like that. So obviously when they find out Jack is captured, the whole gang tweaks out. Now, what I pull from this, and I feel like this is where the gang started realizing their morality. I feel like they didn't feel like they were susceptible to any damage whatsoever. If one of them died, they died. They just didn't really feel like they had a whole lot of morality or care for anything in the world. It was just, they were just surviving day by day. But when Lil Jack got captured, I feel like everyone realized, oh shit, we have weak points. There's not, we're not just a gang of thugs anymore. We're like a family. There's kids and women and children, and there's people we care about here, and we got to take care of, better care of them. You know how a gang of thugs takes better care? They load up every drop of ammunition and gun that they've got, and then they go and raid the entire manor. Now, basically, all you do is you go through, and it sets up one of the most iconic scenes ever. You walk through as a big flying V, and Dutch screams the most hilarious thing ever. Damn. This is badass already.
Get down here now, you inbred trash!
Catherine Braithwaite kind of barricades herself up in this room, and then you kind of get to see Dutch get a little crazy. He busts through there, grabs her, drags her down all through the stairs and stuff like that, which is kind of gruesome. But she did steal your kid, so I didn't feel bad at all at the start. You drag her outside and you start asking her, like, hey, where's our kid? And then she tells you that she sold him off to this guy named Angelo Bronte. Sets up the next chapter perfectly, and one of the most gruesome things happens in any video game. You just killed all her family. So she pretty much crashes out and just runs into the burning house, because I forgot to mention that. Yeah, you burned down her entire manor. So she goes down with a sinking ship. And if you come back to this area, you can actually find her burned corpse, which I think is insane. But you do get to find a little box of gold too. So, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's pretty gruesome. Now, setting up for this fourth chapter is Saint Denis. Now, I know I already talked about how you can venture over there from Rhodes anyway, because it's very close. But this is where you start unlocking the cooler missions of like, oh shit, this is where the gang kind of starts getting real. It starts off as you're running around Saint Denis asking about this guy Angelo Bronte that you know nothing about. And then pretty much a little gang of kids robs your book bag off your back. I don't know why Arthur wears this, like a little fruity purse, but he's one of them that calls it a satchel. So basically, you get a sense of how powerful Angelo Bronte is, because they tell him, like, hey, we know you've been asking around for Angelo Bronte, and he wants to see you now, so we'll tell you the address, but he's expecting you. So you kind of get a sense of, oh shit, Angelo Bronte is like the kingpin of this area. He already knows everything that he needs to know. So you go in and you discuss with him about, like, hey, we want our kid back, blah, 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 and you kind of try and bully your way into his mannerisms, and it don't work. But what does work is you lie to his face and you're a horrible person. And I guess Angelo just loves that for some reason, because he immediately makes a deal with you. Oh, go stop these grave robbers and you can have your kid back, which I always thought was sus anyway, but we did it immediately. Got our kid back, great. But Dutch has been hanging around Micah too long. He's getting a little crazy, getting a little too brave, and he's like, okay, well, we're friends with this guy now, dude. We totally didn't just take money out of his pocket by taking this kid he's going to sell off to Epstein's Island. So he starts taking missions from him and jobs and little tips and stuff like that. So we go to rob this little ferry station. There's like $20 in it. And then Dutch hits his head harder than I've seen any human hit his head ever. And this is where Dutch turns to me. Now, there's a conspiracy theory online that, like, this is when Dutch hits his head, gets brain damage, and then, again, as more we get into the story, you'll see what I'm talking about Dutch kind of gets crazy. But, I mean, this makes the most sense to me because, like, what else could have happened to make him just go crazy? Now, there was little hints and little whims and all that happens, but this was, like, where he went from, like, being at least moderately crazy and, like, doing bad things to, like, he goes up to 11. He turns every dial, maxed out, and this is where he gets, like, just unbearable to be around. I don't know if you guys know how brain damage works, but I'm a big UFC fan, so obviously half my favorite UFC fighters have a whole lot of it. It can alter your mood. It can alter what you do. If you have brain damage, yeah, it's going to happen. And I really think it makes sense for Dutch's story of like, he got brain damage, he didn't know it, whatever happened, and then he was more easily manipulated, mood changes, swings, he's a little more aggressive now, the whole deal. This is too realistic for it not to be the story to me, but I don't know. I think also Micah was kind of playing a hand. There's also another thing I like to say is like, this is where Dutch went from being the silver-tongued, well-dressed guy to he kind of stopped caring about his appearance as much. You could see him kind of getting a little sloppier with how he like dressed, and he got a little dirtier, and he quit washing, and you see him like he starts not wearing his hat anymore. You start seeing his well-spoken explanations and his silver tongue kind of just dwindle away to nothing. He didn't really speak in these weird whims, and he wasn't really nice at negotiating and stuff like that after this. So I feel like that's too much of a sign to go like, oh, yeah, that's just a theory. Now, again, you do meet the mad scientist in this area, which was one of the most fun missions. But I'd like to say one of the coolest things you can do when you get to this area is when you start actually interacting with the Downs. Now, that's going to sound bad. I'm not talking about Bertram. I'm talking about...
Easy there.
He's got a certain type of special strength. Oh, fuck. I'm talking about the Downs family, the ones that you collected the money from, and obviously Arthur contracts TB from. Basically, you can make your honor skyrocket by helping them out, going over to Annesburg and making sure they move up out of there and start taking care of themselves. And I'm pretty sure it's in this time where you can do that. Now, Bertram's a fun mission, too, because that's hilarious, and I made way too many jokes, and I think I'm probably going to get banned, so I'm not going to say anymore. But yeah, this was a really good area for stuff like that, too. But the top just has to be, obviously, the mad scientist and, you know, that clumsy robot that Kai Cenat's in trouble for bullying on his stream recently. Obviously, after Angelo Bronte sets you up, Dutch kind of goes into this mad craze of like he wants to get revenge. And the entire time he's been telling Arthur, we can't afford revenge. We don't have the money or time for that. That is an I can't remember what whim he says it in, but he says it in a really cool, thoughtful way. And then he just changes out of nowhere. And again, it's right after he hits his head on the ferry. So then you go and attack Angelo Bronte for pretty much setting you up before you rob one of the biggest banks in the city, because you know Angelo's probably gonna set you up again. You go and you pretty much hunt down his whole mansion of people, kill them all, and then you take him, and then you get to see Dutch's like true personality kind of shine through. Instead of like doing what he would usually do, like he did with Catherine Braithwaite and just leaving her for dead kind of deal, you see him literally strangle Bronte and then throw him into the alligators. And if you can freak out Arthur or John for how you kill somebody, you gotta do it pretty damn rough. Even Bill was like side-eyeing him going like, what are you doing? Now, again, in this madness mind of Dutch, all he's really focused on is getting more money and trying to get out of there, going to Tahiti or Australia. So then this sets up the bank rob. Now, this is one of the saddest missions because two of my favorite characters die off in this, and it's Lenny and Hosea. I didn't even remember that Hosea died, and I feel like I did kind of remember Lenny dying, but I didn't know how, and I didn't remember when. And this game keeps on killing such important characters off in such like a fashion where you can't really mourn them. You kind of just have to keep moving past their deaths. And same thing with Sean, as it happened in like 10 seconds. Same thing with Lenny. It happened in like a blink of an eye. Someone rushed out of a door and just shot Lenny dead, and there was nothing you could do about it. You couldn't stop him and help him. You pretty much just had to hide. Now, after you hide in this bank job, for some reason, they think it's a good idea. Okay, let's sneak out on boat. Obviously, Charles separates himself from these people because he just goes running, and there's a lot of people that made it out, like Abigail, and they don't really show you any of that, but it's cool. Needless to say, they throw one of the biggest curveballs in this game that I thought was so stupid. Huarma. So when you get on this boat, it runs into a storm, and you lose all the money you just did all that to rob, and then you wake up on an island washed up. Now, you're taken pretty much as like a prisoner. You're saved by these like rebels in this area that they're fighting a war with these other guys, and it's such a confusing story, but it's cool how they set it up. My main issue with Huarma is, I don't know why, but I mean, why did they even put it in the game? It was just like a curveball, like I said, to just toss up the gameplay, which I like curveballs. I just don't think there was enough substance in this area to make it where, you know, I had to go here. You spent so long here and did basically nothing. I just wish it had more to it. Maybe you could revisit it or just, I don't know, some more story. And from what I've heard, they cut a lot of the area out because they actually was going to have a lot more to visit and a lot more to do. But I don't know, it just felt very random and very soulless. I didn't like the island because it kind of just felt like a really long hallway that led to that big building that you fought the war in against like the submarine. It didn't really feel like a place. It didn't feel like an island. Rockstar's kind of common with this, like the same thing with like North Yankton in GTA 5. It didn't really feel like a real lively place because you were on such a set route to go through it. But again, when it's like a prologue of a game versus when you're in the middle of the story in the game, it's two different times. If they would have started this off like pretty soon and early, that would have been easier for me to swallow than like so late into the game where pretty much you're on one of the final chapters. Why am I here? Now, this area is kind of needed to see Dutch and Arthur become more argumentative with each other, which I thought was really cool, but it's still one of those things that I just didn't feel very satisfied watching. But you do get to see Dutch kind of descend more into his madness where he's kind of crazy. After you get back, this is where emotions roll in. This is chapter 5, I believe, or chapter 6, and I knew this was coming, but it's really sad to watch. You start to see Arthur's health just kind of landslide down slowly, and that's why I just kind of grinded the game out after this point. I had to finish it. I may miss some stuff, but I just needed to go ahead and go on and make sure that Como Driscoll gets hang because I couldn't handle like watching Arthur pass out in the middle of the street. This game sets it up beautifully where it really does show you the emotion of watching Arthur's health descent too, because it comes out of nowhere. One minute you're running around and you start hearing yourself cough a little bit here and there, and then all of a sudden your eyes just darken and you're coughing up blood, and I mean, it comes out of nowhere. Now, once you do go to this doctor, right before you go help Sadie with the whole O'Driscoll thing, you kind of see, oh, I know where this story is going. But it's nonetheless still one of the saddest things to watch. It's like watching a family member go through a bad health spell where they're gonna die. Now, I will say, you kind of do get to see Arthur's visions start going a little more down a more narrow path. Instead of fantasizing about some kind of life further on that's going back west and getting the money and living this rich life, you kind of see him start prioritizing family more, like John and Abigail, and he starts prioritizing the people he cares about that need to survive on their own. He tries to watch out for John, and he tries to watch out for Charles, and you kind of see a little more emotional side to him come out instead of him becoming like an animal. And that's why I don't want to do the low honor run. Arthur is evolving into this empathetic character that's more of watching out for everybody instead of what Dutch is developing into, which is just dwindling into a psychotic mind. And the main difference is just Micah the damn demon in his ear and John in my ear. Once Micah gets in the head of Dutch, it's all over to me. Now, Arthur does kind of start breaking away from the gang and doing his own thing, like helping Rain Falls, trying to calm Eagle Flies' rage down and revenge. But again, Dutch is like the evil side to Arthur almost, because everything Arthur does good, Dutch does bad. Instead of helping Rain Falls and trying to get them more on the better end of this war, Dutch manipulates Eagle Flies into wanting revenge so bad that he pretty much gets his entire tribe killed, because he just keeps telling Eagle Flies, oh, you know, you want to get revenge to the oil company, right? And what they did to your family. Dutch uses this attack too as a pretty much a gateway into the getting these bonds that the oil field has. And it's a ton of money for the crew, but again, is it really worth the shit that you're putting these people through? Now, my main turning point for Dutch is when I seen him pretty much abandon me. Arthur's TB is really kicking his ass by this point in the game. Fucking, huh?
Need help? I need help.
What? Bro. And then he gets shot. And you kind of see him leave Arthur to die, man. Eagles Flies luckily saves us, and we try and help him, but he gets shot, saving our lives. And yeah, we saved Eagle Fly's life plenty of times, but I don't know, man. This was where the game really started to push this agenda where the Vanderlyn gang's kind of already broken up. It's just not really said out loud. Because somehow, someway, Dutch just tries to deflect that blame on someone else. He's like, well, you know, I didn't see. I didn't know nothing. I had no idea, son. You know, he constantly just does this like manipulative jammer of not blaming himself, but blaming everyone else. You shouldn't have got yourself in that pickle. What the hell were you doing back there? Playing with your own self? He's always doing something like that, and again, this is where I started going from being one of the biggest fans of Dutch to really just kind of hating. Somehow, someway, Dutch convinces Arthur that they need to do one more score. Even though he just abandoned him and was like, oh shit, I have my AirPods in. I didn't hear you getting killed. That's my fault. Will you help me out and get this little final bit of money? Let's buy the government so they'll get off our ass. I don't know what Dutch even had hope. Somehow, he talks everyone into it. And then obviously, as you know the mission goes, John gets blasted by the shotgun and Dutch goes back for him. Now, I never knew this, but in the first game, he says that, you know, pretty much Dutch left him for dead on a job together. And I never knew that he said that, but this is like the game setting that up for the future, which is, obviously the first game is set further on in history than this game. Red Dead Redemption 2 is in 1899, and then I believe this first game is like 1907. It's where you're hunting the rest of the Vandals. So this is actually like setting up the next story where Dutch kind of left you for dead. Keep this in mind, because he did not die. We know that there's a second game. So we find out his baby mom has been captured by Agent Milton or whatever other agent, Agent Ross, not sure which one, and then you and Sadie kind of have to take it upon yourselves to go save her because they think John is dead, so they don't really care about Abigail anymore. They've lost the connection. They're just like, oh, she's just some random whore.
I am sorry to hear that.
We gotta let her go. John,
There's no way.
Well, sorry, son.
We all hit,
John,
too.
she's just
Isn't that the
bait.
lore that
Got a
Abigail was like
bunch
a
of money,
prostitute or
Dutch.
something? We was
She's
like
just a
knocking her
girl.
socks
We
back
won't
and
do
then,
nothing to her.
Take this.
Abigail rejected Micah one time and Micah
Take
left
this
her to
money,
die.
too.
Yeah, for real.
Take
He's like, you
Jack.
didn't never give me any
We
pussy,
cop our
Dutch.
heads around. Abigail and Mrs.
Thank you.
It ain't like Arthur ain't hit before and like everyone else ain't hit either. I mean, it's kind of worth saving her. Jack could be Jack Morgan or, even Jack Bell, whatever you want to call him. I'm pretty sure everybody in the group has hit. And jokes aside, though, seriously, when you go and try and save Abigail, you find out that Micah's been the one working with Milton the entire time and been snitching. Obviously, in the story, you guys know that Dutch's girlfriend, which got shot for snitching earlier, and I forgot to mention, was completely innocent. You find that out. And this is something that I didn't realize I needed to see, but there was a twist with Micah where you kind of see that he's a rat and like a snitch. And again, I still kind of liked Micah beyond the point until this part. Because, I don't know, he's just a cool character in my mind, but I'm not saying I liked him like I would have had a damn beer with him. I just think it was cool in the sense of like, he was like the mercenary, the villain, the guy doing the shit that no one else wanted to do. And in the Western days, I kind of see it almost as like the apocalypse, do some bad shit. I don't care. But this is where I was like, oh, Micah's like a real bad piece of shit. He's like disgusting. I can forgive the shooting up the whole town of Strawberry for the guns, but this is the turning point where I really just want to watch this motherfucker bleed. I hate his guts. So once you find that out, you kind of group together with everyone and you let Abigail ride off with Tilly and Jack, and you kind of have to tell her, hey, John got hurt, but I don't know. You're going to have to raise him on your own, because at this time you don't know that John lived. And you set off to go back to camp to have a little chat with everybody, to tell them about what you find out about Micah. Well, obviously, no one's going to believe you because, I don't know, they all like worship Dutch, and Dutch worships Micah for some reason. And Micah ain't going to admit he was a damn snitch, so you pretty much get into an immediate Mexican standoff with your entire group. And something you guys pointed out to me that I loved is that everyone aimed their guns at Arthur and John, like Bill, Dutch, but Javier never aims at you. He aims upward. And everyone was telling me that that's the actual actor that plays Javier that was like, hey, it's like a brotherhood. Like, I really felt love towards him, and there's no way I'm going to aim a gun at him. And I was like, dude, it's crazy how much people get into these characters and really make them their own in the sense of like, yeah, maybe in the story Javier is supposed to be like a bad person, and I know you see him in the first game. I don't really know what happens to him, but obviously him and John don't get along in the old game, but for some reason he just had this love for Arthur that he couldn't bring himself to aim at him. And what I wish they would have done in a sense is I wish he would have aimed at John, but he didn't aim at Arthur. I feel like we kind of all realized that everyone kind of loved Arthur, even like Bill and everybody loved Arthur, but John just wasn't as loved because, again, they seen him more as like a loose end than anything else. And I feel like that's what the hardest part for all these characters is. Arthur is loved, but John really, honestly, they don't really care for him as much because, I feel like everyone's kind of jealous that he's Arthur's favorite. And I love seeing their own little personality traits in that because you kind of see that Bill doesn't really care at all. You see, like, nobody in the group really cares about you except people like Javier, people like Charles, people that are on your side. And it kind of shows you how the further on in the game is going to lead. And again, the epilogue. Something I wish would happen, in my main opinion, is coming from the Javier thing, is I wish they would remake Red Dead 1 and remaster it with like how they did the first Last of Us games, how they completely redid all the mocap and the acting and everything. But I wish they would redo it where it would fit Red Dead 2 a little bit better. Like, I wish they would redo Javier where he's a little more loving of John and being like, hey, and bring up Arthur. I wish they would redo it where Dutch was, again, an insane lunatic like he always is. They ain't really got to do that part much. I wish they would even, like, bring dialogue from the second one and bring it into the first one, you know? Remake the game and kind of rewrite the story to better fit the second game, because the second game was so amazing that I feel like that's such a cool thing they could do with the first one, is kind of alter it, but not in a bad way. Just make it lead more, like, into the second game that you made. Make like a Red Dead 3 or, well, a Red Dead 1 remaster that's more of like a Red Dead 3. And kind of then it kind of just discontinues the first game, which, again, a lot of you old folks is going to get mad at. But still, it's really cool. I think you guys would still like that. Like maybe Bill could still hold a grudge toward John and even have even more anger toward whatever you want to do to kind of remake the first game, but make it its own kind of little spin where it fits Red Dead 2 a little bit more in the lore. I think it would be a really cool thing to do. But anyway, this little Mexican standoff you get into is broken up pretty immediately by the Pinkertons raiding your entire camp. And it was horrible. You get into a shootout and pretty much you run off with John and your horse gets wetted up. I ain't gonna lie, I've never really got so close to crying in a video game. I promise you guys, you're just dramatic. You know, I didn't feel like crying at all. You know, I was smiling ear to ear, and I had so much happiness in my heart for. Did my fucking horse just die? No. Equal fucking... We can all equal this shit out. Seriously, jokes aside, it's one of the saddest things I've ever seen in any game is watching Arthur kind of have to react to his horse, and as his name was, Hans. Watching him die it really tears with me, so... I fucking hate you, Rockstar, for making me have an attachment to a virtual horse like I'm some 12-year-old girl playing Roblox. If you pick to save John and get him out of there, you get to see Arthur and Micah finally get in that little tussle that I've been waiting to see. Luckily, Arthur's been watching UFC for a few months, so he knows striking like no other, and I don't know why he didn't do any better takedowns. He's pretty much just getting him in a collar tie and tossing him down. I wish he would have done more of like hip toss or something in that sense, but it's okay. Even with tuberculosis on your side, you kind of still knock down Micah by pistol whipping him, and you pretty much... I won the fight, dog. I don't know how in the game we didn't win it, but it's okay. I know it's rigged. One of the saddest scenes happens where you crawl to the gun, and right at the end, Dutch steps on your damn hand. We were so close to killing Micah, this close. But then Dutch has to do that to me, and I'll never forgive him for that. That's why I can't wait to see him die. Hearing Dutch's voice... He knows that Arthur's right, and that's something that everyone pointed out to me in my stream, is like, obviously he can tell Micah was really the rat, so he killed his love of his life, basically, even though he cheated on her with like every other girl in the damn camp. He had to kill Molly O'Shea, and then also killing his best friend, basically like a son, because of a rat. He may not be the same Dutch we've seen in the beginning of the game, but he does love Arthur like a son, and to see him die like that was a lot, man. You gotta admit, brain damage or not, you still have emotions. And it was a little too much for Dutch. He kind of just like walks off leaving Micah, which I thought was hilarious. Because in the epilogue, they gang back up, so what's the point? Watching Arthur's final moment had me just so happy and sheening with joy. I was so excited. No, seriously, it was one of the saddest things ever. It is better than any movie you've ever watched, better than any show you've ever watched, or game you've ever watched. I don't even cry when animals die, like my actual pets in real life. I rarely cry when a family member dies, but man, this game had me a little choked up at the end. I ain't gonna lie. Can't believe pixels and polygons had me feeling this upset, and it just kind of kills me. Because if you haven't played this game for yourself, you'll never really know that feeling. You can watch all the videos you want all live long day, but until you've been in control and spent the hours with a character like this, you'll never know how that feels. I truly can't get over like how this game made me feel emotionally, and I don't know why it did this to me, but it really wrecked me. Now, I do think it is a pretty cool story being told, and it doesn't break anything in Red Dead 1 other than like characters like Sadie Adler doesn't come in the first game, you know. There's little plot holes like that kind of kill me. I would have loved to seen where Charles ended up. I wish there was like some kind of DLC they added in, something of that sort, where it kind of just showed you where these characters ended up, but they never got to do that because Red Dead 1 is set later and it come out earlier, and, you know, they didn't really know what they were doing back then and setting up for, but then Red Dead 2 set up so much, and it's just, there's a lot that they could have hit with a new game, like that was an in-between, like, you know, the first game and the second game, but it's okay. They told a good enough story in the sense of, now you know why they don't really talk about Arthur, and you know, like, you know, they kind of explain, like, it's kind of an emotional thing for them where they don't bring up Arthur, they don't talk about him a lot because he did them so good that it's kind of just sad to bring that up. Now, I wish they would, again, remake the game in some sense of just adding some dialogue for Arthur or something. Like when they did this little remake for PC where they added all this new stuff, like different resolutions and mouse and keyboard controls and everything else. I wish they would have, again, just called in Marston and been like, hey, try and throw some lines in there. We'll get the original microphone you recorded on so it still sounds like shit. But I wish they would have been able to just a little bit more substance for Red Dead 2. Now, I'm not saying Red Dead 2 is lacking any of that, but I'm just saying when you do go over into the first game, it's kind of hard to carry over the fact that, like, oh, Arthur existed and Sadie and Charles and all that, and they're never mentioned. Never. It just kind of hurts my heart. Now, that is a little bit of an issue, but it's really not because, again, I've been playing Red Dead 1 for the last 2 days or so, and still it's an amazing game. You don't really have to have that part as much as I thought, but it's still, it could be used. So if they make a DLC for one of these games, even though it's been a few years, or again, if they do make a new game and it has some like dialogue, or if it's in between those two games, I'm not going to be upset at all. I really wish they would do something like that, but I feel like they're going to try and get past this era. I just don't know how they're going to do it, and I really wish they would make a game that's a little bit before this, where it's the Blackwater era and the Blackwater time, and you get to see characters like Sean and Javier and Arthur growing up. It'll be like a really cool, like, teen kind of like story where they're a little bit younger and they're like doing reckless stuff. But it would be really cool to see. Unfortunately, though, it wouldn't have a very good end because you would know, oh, well, you know, to even get to see the end, I'd have to like bounce over into the damn second game and play the other 70 hours that game is. So it would be kind of hard, but again, it would be really cool at this. Anyways, guys, I think this video is long enough. I've nearly have 50 minutes recorded, so this is probably going to be anywhere 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't know. It's going to be a real long video, so I'm going to cut it here. If you guys have any more ideas for videos I can make about Red Dead Redemption 2, any of that sort, please leave it down below. I will be modding the game, so don't worry. I'm going to be downloading all that, and I'm going to be playing that on stream, and I'm probably going to make a video that's going to be more like a funny moments kind of thing, where I'm just kind of modding around in the game and having fun. I may even talk about the game doing a low honor run, and then kind of compare the low honor versus high honor, just whatever you guys want to see. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and oh my God, the amount of time this is going to take me to make, it better do good. So you guys better watch this video all the way through because I'm going to be very upset. And if you do watch this video all the way through, comment down below, please. I want to know. Anyways, guys, I love you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video, and that's it.